What's going on, everybody? Zack Rosenblatt back here with Mike Kaye for the latest episode of the No Huddle Show, a pseudo-emergency podcast edition. We're sorry we haven't been with you the last couple weeks between vacations and furloughs and things of that nature. Mike and I just haven't been on at the same time until now. And just in time, conveniently, because today we were planning on recording a podcast anyway, actually. And so the Eagles conveniently, which they don't usually do this stuff conveniently for us, which is pretty rude of them, but today they did. And Jason Peters is coming back to the Eagles, and in a somewhat surprising twist, at least to me, I was pretty surprised by it. I haven't really seen what your thoughts are quite yet, but he'll be playing right guard for the Eagles, at least initially, and that so obviously he's the replacement for Brandon Brooks, and now the offensive line, in theory, is set for the 2020 season if there is one. What was like your immediate reaction to that specific part of the news, less than the Jason Peters coming back part?
You said something interesting there. That was basically my reaction. You know what I mean? So I had heard over the weekend that there were whispers that they were looking into a veteran guard and still talking to Jason Peters. It looks like a game of telephone kind of merged, and he is the veteran guard, and he's also just Jason Peters. This is... I don't like this move. I don't like this move at all. For several reasons. I think it goes against their offseason philosophy. Yes, I've talked about, COVID and its impact on the preseason, and training camp as well. And I thought that made sense for a guy who has played left tackle for the last 15 years. I don't really like the idea of bringing in somebody who's 38 to change positions.
38 with bad knees, by the way.
And change. I mean, he's never played guard. He's never played guard. Yeah. He played right tackle in 2005 for the Bills. That's the only time he's been on the right side. So he's not only never played guard, he's also hasn't played on the right side in 15 years. So you're doing that, and you're saying, okay, cool. See, to me, I don't want to put on a tinfoil hat here, but my logic is, like, if Dillard doesn't play well, do you move Peters back to left tackle, or is he still your right guard? Or if Peters doesn't play well at right guard, do you move him to left tackle and then it's sayonara Andre Dillard from the starting lineup? I think that's something that the Eagles have kind of left open-ended here. I mean, I got a lot of pushback, and I want to publicly apologize. I kind of jumped the gun because I had heard that they'd wanted to bring back Jason Peters, and the assumption was that he was going to be a left tackle. I posted a draft that I wrote over the weekend, talking about how it's a bad look for Andre Dillard. I've updated the story, but I also still think this is not a terrific look for Andre Dillard in the fact that, yeah, he doesn't have to immediately look over his shoulder, but what if Jason Peters just isn't good at right guard? And here's the thing, like, the NFLPA is pushing for very limited contact in practices and also pushing for no preseason games. You're going to have a man who has so much muscle memory on the left side and on the outside, and you're going to now put him in an elevator in a place that he's never been on a completely opposite side of the... Yeah, he's got Lane Johnson there, but that doesn't really matter. I don't... It's just a very weird move to make, especially from a muscle memory sense. He's not like a college kid who's been, moving around the offensive line like Jack Driscoll. This is a guy who has been an all-world left tackle for 15 years. And I just think, look, Jason Peters wanted to be here. It's very clear. It's abundantly clear. For him to swallow his pride and say, look, I'm going to play right guard when I know I'm better than the left tackle is a pretty big deal. And I applaud him for that. That said, I don't think I don't get this move other than the fact that maybe it expands your depth. Matt Pryor's a guy who can play 3 to 4 spots like Big V did last year. They seem to be somewhat high on him. And the thing is if he would have started at right guard, they would have had 3, listen to this, Zach, 3 offensive snaps in the regular season of experience behind that entire starting line. All from Nate Herbig. Suo Opeta has no experience. They drafted 2 rookies who have no NFL experience. Jordan Mailata's never played a meaningful game in his life. Like, they had to do something. I will tell you this, bringing back Peters, I don't know if Jordan Mailata can make this team. too. I mean, because you've got Peters, who, if there's an injury to Dillard or he struggles, you can move Peters over to left tackle and Pryor to right guard. Pryor could also be your backup right tackle, your backup right guard, and your backup left guard. I just don't see how Jordan Mailata wins the swing tackle job, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. What's your reaction? Are you on the same page as me? Because I feel like a crazy person right now.
Well, I think there are a few different layers to this. On one hand, I think Jason Peters has proven time and time again that you doubt him at your own peril, kind of thing.
Yeah, I
the
agree.
age thing, and he was an above average left tackle, as you said, better than Andre Dillard. He considered himself better. He played most of the games the last 2 years, even if he left a bunch of them. So on that hand, this is a Hall of Famer, one of the most athletic and talented offensive linemen to ever play in the NFL, let alone for the Eagles. So I understand the Eagles believing in him being able to make the transition in that sense. And, I think it's fair to be, from the Eagles perspective, whether you agree with this or not, it's fair to be more confident in Peters' ability to fill in for Brandon Brooks than Matt Pryor, who has only started one game in his career or whatever it was.
I think
So
there's some validity to
I'm
that.
sure there's that mindset. You kind of covered this a little bit. I saw some of the Eagles writers tweeting this, that the idea is that he's also kind of their swing tackle, where he can fill in at left or right tackle if need be. I don't love that for a 38-year-old with bad knees to keep moving him where he's looking in a different direction in theory. Like you said, because he's going to be changing, looking right or left and all that. I mean, you've talked to experts. I don't think either of us can pretend to be like full-on offensive line experts. I know you talked to Trey Thomas and some other people.
Yeah.
And a lot of them say it's not as simple as just he's great here, so he can probably be good over there. So I think that's a legit concern. This all kind of, the underlying thing here is that whether there will be a season or not anyway. And I'm sure the Eagles, or whether it will stop and start. And if it's doing that, then maybe you feel better about Jason Peters being around and, staying in shape than a young guy who's never proven himself. And it's such a weird situation that it's hard to fully evaluate in that way. But yeah, I'm less confident in his ability to be a stellar right guard. It seems like people aren't preparing as well for the possibility that he could be bad at right guard in theory. The odds of Jason Peters being bad anywhere aren't great, but the odds of him being maybe below average or average when they had an elite right guard before, that they're pretty good considering his age, his injury history, and the fact that he's, like you said, he hasn't played on the right side of the offensive line in general in 15 years. So I'm not maybe I'm not as negative as you about it, but I'm definitely not as positive as everybody else seems to be.
Wow, that's a weird transition for us. Normally, I'm the more positive one. You're the next.
Yeah.
So here's what I'll say. What I do like about how they announced this is they announced him as the guard. So what's positive here for Andre Dillard is they aren't immediately, closing the door on him. I think that that's really important. Whether they think, he's the ultimate stopgap for them or not, they're going to at least give Peters a shot at right guard. And I think it's similar to Big V last year, where they put Big V at right guard and he ended up really never playing the position because Brandon Brooks came back and did his thing. But this offensive line lacks a lot of experience behind the starting line. And you do kind of wonder, with Pryor being probably your most versatile offensive lineman, if the idea is to not only strengthen your depth, but also have a legitimate sixth man, because they didn't have that if Pryor was starting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jack Driscoll was pretty much it, and he's never played an NFL snap. So
right, and I don't think this is an indictment of any of the rookies or any of the young players because they haven't been on the field yet. But my concern is, guys make the team really from training camp practice, and that's fine. But if you're not having a lot of contact for the line, it's very hard to kind of decipher who's playing well and who's transitioning well and who's comfortable. My issue too is Jason Peters, as you said, has bad knees. He typically leaves games. So you're basically having to prep Matt Pryor to be a starter too. I mean, they always say they practice like they're practicing to start, but Matt Pryor is going to have to be ready at right guard. And the issue is if he has to come in at right guard, what are you going to do when Andre Dillard or Lane Johnson have to come out for a spell? Who's going to be that other tackle? And so I think this is a really interesting setup for them, and I'm not really on board. I'm on board on bringing Jason Peters back. If they brought him back at left tackle, I'd get it. But like right now, I'm just like struggling to buy into the right guard message, if that makes sense. Like I think bringing him back was the right move. I just think pigeonholing him at right guard and saying, you know what, we know you're near 40. We know this is the end of your career, but we're going to put you in a position. You know, the Eagles typically, Jeff Stoutland doesn't like to disrupt multiple positions. He's not a guy who likes to do that for the sake of one player.
He always says you don't want to get worse at two spots or whatever.
Yeah. Right. So, look, Isaac Seumalo gets a lot of flack, but Isaac Seumalo was very good during the second half of the season. Like, very good, I thought.
He was consistent at least, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, he had the bad
game. Which is way better than he has been in the past, yeah.
Right. He had that bad game against Grady Jarrett, but everybody has bad games against Grady Jarrett. He's a top 3 defensive tackle in the league. I just think a lot of people have asked me, would you move Seumalo to the right guard spot because he does have experience there, and then keep Peters on the left side? Well, then you're having Peters, who's inexperienced at left guard, next to Andre Dillard, who's inexperienced in the NFL at left tackle. I just don't know if that really helps you. I mean, maybe it does in the sense that you have a guy who knows the position next to him and knows where to be and everything, but I also think moving Isaac for the sake of moving Isaac to make Jason Peters comfortable makes this move even worse, if that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, and you have to remember that Seumalo is a guy who's had confidence issues in the past, and he's more likely to be here long term. So you want to keep him in the spot where he's most comfortable. Whereas Peters, in theory, I mean, again, like I think we're both surprised that Peters was willing to do this. On top of everything, like he's been really like he's always talked about his legacy and how he thinks he's one of the best left tackles. Like if he still thinks he's one of the best left tackles in the NFL, which he probably does. I'm sure he got interest from other teams. Maybe not enough money is probably why he didn't sign elsewhere.
I mean, this contract is nothing. Like this contract,
it was like $6 million, but only 3.5 guaranteed or something like that.
It's 3 guaranteed, and he can make up to 6 with all of his incentives. And I this is just an assumption, but my assumption would be that one of those incentives would be as if he plays a certain amount of games at left tackle.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
That's an assumption. I don't want to put that out as a report or anything, but to get to that number, I mean, $3 million to double your salary or double your outlook, whether he's got like a $1 million like roster, you know, like base salary, he's at least got a 1.5 base salary. So you say with $3 million guaranteed, he's probably making around 4.5 million. But to get 1.5 million in incentives, there's got to be some like legit hard to reach stuff in there.
And on that point, I would say odds are pretty good that he winds up playing tackle at some point, even if Andre Dillard is good or bad or whatever, or if Lane Johnson gets hurt. Like an underlying thing here that nobody's really talking about, we haven't really discussed yet, is that the fact that there's going to be positive coronavirus tests if there's a season. There's going to be guys that have to sit for 2 weeks or whatever. And if one of those is a tackle, then you feel better about just moving Jason Peters over than, playing somebody out of position or playing Jordan Mailata or playing Jack Driscoll at left tackle kind of thing. So in that sense, I get why maybe they wanted Peters instead of, Ronald Leary or Larry Warford, who can only play guard kind of thing.
Yeah, I think there's logic to that. I think when we're looking at the Eagles in general, they're very good about cross-training, or at least they at least attempt to be good at cross-training. I shouldn't give them that much credit, but I think
they do it.
Yeah, they do it. At least. I think this is a matter of really trusting someone like Jeff Stoutland, who I think is one of the 5 best offensive line coaches in the league. He clearly has a say in this. There's no question about it. He's the run game coordinator. He's also the guy who has been with Peters the longest in his career. And so I think from that standpoint, I just find it really interesting because when you talk to Trey Thomas, Trey's like, so you're going to have him kick off his opposite leg. He's used to being in space. You're basically, it's like a whole new world. Like he's on like a magic carpet ride with Aladdin right now. I mean, no, for real. Like this is a whole new thing. And I think there are people that are just like, oh, well, he's a great offensive lineman. Just move him. And I think the Eagles realize that the transition's not just, rainbows and butterflies, but I just think like the weight of this is kind of big. If he's not successful, what do you do? Because the idea of him playing swing tackle at this point in his career is kind of crazy to me.
I mean, he's not going to accept being a backup either. Like if he's bad, they're not going to bench him.
Right, but he's got $3 million in guaranteed money. So what do you do? Like, I mean, like that's the thing.
I guess would he just say, "Fine, cut me" or something? Like I don't even know how that would play out because that's always kind of been. They've always walked a fine line with him, where they didn't really ask him to move at all the last few years, even if that would have been right last year or whatever. He obviously was in the end, he was obviously the right guy to play left tackle the last couple of years, even if he wasn't Jason Peters of old. But like you're walking a fine line with a guy who's as respected as he is in that building and who kind of like does what he wants in a way, like not in a bad way, but like he kind of like he doesn't talk to the media for most of the season and nobody questions it pretty much.
Well, and when he does, he's the best quote.
Yeah, that's the part, actually, yeah.
You know what's crazy? And I'll tell a story. So we were in London in 2018. I had been on the beat, I guess, like a month and a half, and I'd only really talked to Jason Peters once. And I remember turning to you and being like, I don't know if I really want to talk to him. And you go, no, he's the best quote on the team. I was like, oh, really? Like, I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't even really think about it. So then I went over.
Because he just says what he thinks. Like, he doesn't care what like the blowback or whatever.
And then so we were at that like rugby field where they practice, and I went over, and this man is like going off on like beautiful tangents of quotes. Like, it's a beat writer's dream. And I said to myself, I'm going to interview Jason Peters every chance I get for the rest of my life. And
that was like 2 more times.
Yeah, there was like, I think we talked like 4 more times. And he told me that he didn't want to retire. And I got some one-on-one time with him last year. He was great.
Well, that makes me think of like training camp last year. Like on the rare time he talked, he like mentioned like in passing something, because he was mentoring Andre Dillard at that point. That was like a big storyline last year, and that's actually something I wanted to touch on in a second anyway. But and he said like who his mentor was like in passing when he was first coming at the Bills. So I wound up being able to do a pretty cool story on the guy that mentored him, and that's why like guys like that are fun to talk to because they just kind of talk off the cuff. And I think of like after they beat the Bears in the playoffs in the locker room, I like asked him about going back to New Orleans. He's like, oh yeah, we're going to go in there and beat them. And so of course that blew up pretty good because when you guarantee a win, that always goes over, especially with New Orleans fans who are pretty sassy. But all right, so getting back to the original point though. So another like side of this is it'll be interesting to see how Andre Dillard takes this. He could take this as Jason Peters is there as a threat. Like if I play bad, is he going to come play poorly? Is he going to come in and replace me? Or he could view it as, all right, my mentor is still here. I can go to him. Like there's no better offensive line coach outside of Jeff Stoutland than Jason Peters that he could possibly have. So I think that's going to be a story because I think Dillard's had some confidence issues too. And you saw in his struggles that a lot of that had to do with a lack of confidence in his ability to play right tackle that 1 week or like whatever it was. So I'm very curious to see how he takes it because that's going to kind of dictate a lot of what happens.
Yeah, so something that I touched on about their offseason philosophy and kind of looking at a youth movement here. Here's my it's not a huge overarching problem. A lot of people on the beat give me crap because I care so much about the backups. But I do think they need to get to the point where they have like long-term development here. Like this could be Jason Kelsey's last year.
Yeah.
Lane Johnson, there's always the small chance that, God forbid, he gets another suspension. He's out for an entire season. Andre Dillard's still a work in progress. Isaac Seumalo's got one really good season to his name. They really need to develop talent. And bringing in Peters, it's going to be really tough to make this team as a backup offensive lineman because when you look at it, they keep 9 guys typically. So the 5 guys, the 6 guys that probably are locks to make this team are Dillard, Seumalo, Kelsey, Peters, Johnson, and Pryor. And then I would say Jack Driscoll's probably a lock to make the team too. So that's 7 guys. And then
so it leaves 2 or 3 spots on the active roster, really.
Right. And so there's people that are still like marking out for Jordan Mailata. There are people that are really excited about Prince Tega Wanogho, who might start the season on PUP. There's people. I mean, look, they love Nate Herbig, and Suo Opeta is a guy who was very highly regarded as an undrafted free agent signing. He and TJ Edwards were the two big names that they signed. And then they brought
and they prevented him from being signed by somebody else last year,
right?
By promoting him, yeah.
And then they brought in Luke Juriga, who profiles as a bigger Jason Kelsey, and they gave him a decent guarantee. So I just think like this is going to be interesting because some of these guys are going to get picked up if they get cut. Now the new roster size rules, where you can call up two guys from the practice squad every week. One of them has to be an offensive lineman. That's more of an incentive to keep less offensive linemen on the 53 roster to begin with. So it might mean that they only keep 8 and then they call up one of those guys. The problem is you got to get those guys to the practice squad before you can, and
I feel like at this point, Mailata would make it that far, honestly.
Yeah, probably. But I think what the problem is here is this offensive line talent is like needed in droves.
Yeah.
You need to have at least 7 really good offensive linemen, and most teams don't have that. So you could see a guy like Herbig or somebody get picked up. I also think when you look at the long term, we talked about Kelsey. You need a successor there. And as much as Isaac Seumalo has been earmarked for that, supposedly behind the scenes, if he's a really good left guard, why are you going to make yourself worse at that position? Now, Jack Driscoll makes sense as a future left guard, and then maybe you move Isaac, but you still don't know what you have there. And I just think, like, look, Jason, you want to win now. This is the year to win now. The window is closing. I get it, 100%. I know that everybody's going to blow up the comments with that. That said, they could drop a guy who turns out to be a really good player, or maybe 2. And so I think those are the long-term consequences. That said, if they feel like they're going to go on a run, which they clearly do, this is the time to do it. Because next year they're going to have to cut a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Not on the offensive line, but in general.
If you were predicting which offensive lineman make it and what should go to the practice squad, like what would it be right now? After the 6 locks that you said.
So I would do Jack Driscoll.
That's
so to give you just like not to go too in depth, but I would keep Jack Driscoll because he would be my backup left guard. He would kind of be what Stefan Wisniewski had been over the last few years. Okay. He's my Seumalo insurance. I don't want to teach him too many spots. Pryor is going to be like Big V. He's going to be my backup right guard, my backup right tackle, and probably in emergency circumstances, if Jason Peters is injured, my backup left tackle. So I have those 7 guys. I know I'm going to have those 7 guys. I'm probably putting Prince Tega Wanogho on PUP. It's a shortened off season. Why risk it? He had a meniscus injury. Let him have an injury red shirt for the year. And then you can expand his, eligibility, kind of like what you did with Sidney Jones, where Sidney Jones is going to be a restricted free agent next year because he didn't get a full year, his rookie year, to count against his credibility in the league or whatever. Sorry, that's in the weeds. Then I think Suo Opeta and Nate Herbig are my other 2 guys because they sat on those guys for a year. Excuse me, similar to what they did with Herbig. Similar to what they did with Pryor the year before. They clearly think that he's a guy both of those guys have potential. I think Suo Opeta could be a potential right tackle or left guard down the road. I think Herbig's a guy they really want to see what he has at center. But he was a really good right guard at Stanford. So I think they want to keep their options open there. The issue here with Mailata is if there's no preseason, he's got maybe 4 or 5 preseason games to his name in football in general. And that's not enough for me, especially at the left tackle or right tackle position, which are so important. Opeta would be the guy that I would pick over him. Juriga really intrigues me, but you can wrap up signing bonuses into practice squad contracts, so it's not that big of a deal. Juriga I would put on the practice squad. Julian Good-Jones, I know nothing about, so I'm not even going to try to look into that. And I guess, Keegan Render, who was with them last year, as you hear Jack barking. I think that's your main group, but yeah, I don't know. I know I'm going randomly.
Sounds like Jack has some thoughts.
Yeah, well, Jack is a big Julian Good-Jones fan. He's watched more tape on him than I have. Look, what also needs to be talked about, not that it will really matter, but the Eagles need to make a roster move now that they've signed Peters. I do wonder who they cut. I also think it's worth talking about now too. The NFLPA is pushing for the teams to cut down their rosters to 80 players. Now, that's interesting for the Eagles because they have Matt Leo, who's part of the International Players Pathway program. So he counts as an extra spot. They have 91 players as opposed to 90. I don't know if they'd make them cut them down to 80 or cut them down to 81, but you're talking about cutting down 10 players who are going to lose their dreams before they even realize it, and then bringing in Peters, it's going to be at least 11 because you got to cut that extra person. So we might have even less offensive linemen to choose from when we're projecting the roster next week or the week after. So this is just all a mess. It's like, this is probably the hardest offseason to predict ever. I mean, and understandably so. I've seen people online say, or on social media saying, that this signing was only due to Brooks. I don't believe that for a second. Maybe it finalized things. But they've been talking to him talking to Peters since April. I think Peters wanted to come back. I think the Eagles wanted to have him back. This gave them an easy in to bring him back. It all worked out. And let's call this segment Tinfoil. The Tinfoil segment, because I actually think bringing him in under the assumption of him moving to right guard only to be as insurance for Dillard is like really kind of brilliant if you think about it. If you're a conspiracy theorist, you're not completely wiping out the opportunity for Andre Dillard. You're giving Andre Dillard all the backing publicly that you can, and then if he stinks up the joint, then you've got good old Jason Peters to move back to left tackle and you regroup. I think this is a smart PR way of handling this, at least. So there's that.
All right, yeah. So we can put a bow on the Peters convo. Before we get going, do you think they make any other moves before? Other than if the rosters are cut down, which will make it even more complicated. But do you see them bringing back a Vinny Curry? I don't think they're going to do anything major. You can touch on that, but do you see them doing anything else?
I hate to be a wet blanket here, but not really. I mean, I
don't think you really need to at this point.
Maybe you bring in a linebacker. Like, that's the one position where I'm like, wow, they are like paper thin there. But like, here's the thing: people have said bring back Nigel Bradham. Well, Nigel Bradham's been a free agent longer than free agencies existed this year. If they wanted that to happen, he'd be back. You look at somebody like Vinny Curry. I don't know what's going on there. I actually thought he'd get a decent deal. I thought he played well.
I think with him, you can maybe point to the fact that like so many of the edge rushers are still on the market still too.
Yeah, it's been a bad edge rush market. That's a good point. I never thought they were going to be in on Clowney. I just don't think, like, if you sign him to an $8 to $9 million deal, it's a 1-year deal, yes, but it still impacts next year because it's creating a bleak salary cap rollover opportunity for you. Bringing in Peters, they're probably at about $20 million. In cap space. We haven't seen the contract, so we don't know. But
yeah,
if you bring in somebody on a $9 million contract, guess what? It all hits on a 1-year deal. So then you've got $11 million to roll over. You still haven't signed your entire draft class either. So I just don't think that that's smart business. I also don't think Clowney helps you from a sack standpoint. He's very good. He's a very good run. He's one of the best run defenders in the league. But their whole thing with getting rid of former defensive line coach, you talk to him.
What's that?
Chris Wilson? No,
Oh yeah.
not Chris Wilson.
Philip Daniels.
Philip Daniels. Yeah, the whole point of getting rid of Philip Daniels was that you wanted to see more production. Well, Clowney does a lot of things that are great that don't end up in the stat sheet. That's not necessarily helping you. Plus, you just picked up the 5th-year option on Derek Barnett. You're not going to bench Brandon Graham when you're paying him the money that you are. So I don't, and they supposedly really like Josh Sweat from everything I've been told. So yeah, I mean, I could see Vinny Curry coming in as the 4th defensive end, because there's so many question marks behind them with Sharif Miller and Joe Osman coming off an ACL tear and Deshaun Hall likely to start on PUP. And, we don't know what Casey Toohill is. So yeah, I mean, look, I could see Vinny Curry coming back maybe, but probably not till they figure out what's going on in training camp. I just don't think there's any rush to. His market clearly isn't there, which is a shame because I thought he played pretty well last year.
Yeah, he had a decent year. Anything else you want to add before we get out? Training camp technically should be starting in 2 weeks. We don't really know exactly what that's going to look like yet. They're still negotiating with the NFLPA and the owners, or the league or whatever. So we don't know exactly when we'll even be allowed to be there, and us being there, we won't be allowed to do a lot of things that we would have in the past. So a lot of the fun of training camp coverage is kind of going to be going by the wayside. You won't have as many training camp stars, I would say, that you have in the past maybe, and there won't be as much play-by-play coverage, and we won't really get any one-on-one interviews, at least in person anymore. But yeah, I'm very curious to see what this looks like in 2 weeks, if it even starts then.
Yeah, I actually wanted to bring up something interesting that I saw that Dave Spadaro, the Eagles in-house beat writer, brought up. They announced the winners of their internal competitions via the virtual program, and Rob Davis was brought up as one of them, which I thought was really interesting. Because you just brought up, we're not going to be able to track competitions the way we used to probably. Rob Davis is an interesting guy, and this is my final thought for the podcast, but if Alshon Jeffrey starts on PUP, they really only have one X receiver in JJ Arcega-Whiteside, who they don't really even know if he's up to par. Rob Davis is a big body. He's super athletic. I know he quote unquote disappeared during some games because he was basically used as the clear out route runner and a blocker, similar to Matt Collins. But I wonder if having a year of experience might help him sneak on as the 6th wide receiver on the depth chart. I think they have a lot of Z receivers and a lot of guys who can fit in the slot, but Rob Davis is a guy who brings size, pretty decent blocker, and he's been in the league for a bit.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. All right, we can wrap up on that note. We'll hopefully get back to you guys again next week with another podcast. I'm sure we'll know a lot more about what training camp will look like if it even starts on time. By then, we can start previewing training camp a little bit more. Unless the Eagles make another big move, which who knows? I mean, according to Brian Baldinger, they were going to make a big move, and we don't know if this was the one. So, yeah. Anyway, we'll end. we'll end on that. We'll end on that note. Thanks for listening, guys. Write us some reviews, leave us some questions, and we'll try and get them on the next pod.